Still a very good morning to you. I always say that because you might just be tuning in and just turning on your television. But this is the second interview and we're looking at State of Origin, David Mack's proposal, and that is what this is themed. On Tuesday, October 30th, 2012, the House of Fulani Community in Jos rejected the appointment of Lawal Ishaq, a Hausa lawyer, as Senior Special Advisor to the Plateau State Governor on Hausa Community Matters.
The pressure group of the Hausa people in Jos North Local Government Area of Plateau State, Jasawa Elders Foundation, said Lawal Ishaq's appointment was an attempt to make the Hausa people settlers in Jos.
The Hausa community said they would not concede their state as a genuine indigenes of Jos North and would not be reduced to settler status like the Yorubas, Igbos and South South people in Jos.
The Jos situation is part of a larger national problem confronting Nigeria. That problem is the determination of the status of a Nigerian who is either born or who has lived for long in a state outside of his ancestral society.
The challenge has created a crisis of indigenous settler of origin in many states.
The Nigerian constitution is clear on who is a Nigerian citizen. These are those born in Nigeria before independence in 1960 and those who naturalize.
These Nigerians are entitled to live anywhere in Nigeria, pursue legitimate means of livelihood and not to suffer any discrimination whatsoever.
Unfortunately, Primordial's sense of ownership has not given way to a broader and inclusive national ownership. This has caused those who lay claims to ancestral ownership to exclude those they call settlers in having access to all manner of opportunities available in that state.
The situation has not been helped by official demands for state of origin and authentication of local government of origin before appointments into public office, recruitment into the forces, admission into state-owned institutions, award of scholarships, award of contracts, and many other opportunities.
In the struggle to gain political control, politicians have fanned the embers of both differences, and this can form indigenous settlers. The differences gain sympathy. This has tended to polarize groups in many states.
At the Parliamentary Union Conference in Canada, Nigeria's Senate President David Mack suggested replacing state of origin with state of residence as a means of addressing the indigenous settler conflict. The question arises, can Nigeria retain federal character principle and still introduce the state of residence status? What are the likely benefits of using that state of origin? And joining us in the studio to discuss this issue, we have the gentleman, we have had him several times over, and of course, Honorable Aliyu Gebi, Chairman Committee on Internal Security. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll ask the first question. The Nigerian constitution is clear on who is a Nigerian. But does the Nigerian constitution recognize an indigene or a settler?
The Nigerian constitution, as far as I can tell, recognizes more an indigene than even a citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And I think therein lies our problem. When you have a document that is supposed to be perfection in imperfection, a document that is supposed to be ever evolving to suit the needs and demands of the citizenry, that actually puts a stumbling block to nationhood and nation building and federalism and so on and so forth. So I would tend to really agree. I thought this is the first time I have the opportunity to actually congratulate our leader, the Senate President, for such a brilliant assertion. I think the time has come. It is something that we at the National Assembly, at the House of Representatives particularly, have been pushing for. If you recall our legislative agenda, I think it was even captured in there. So once and for all, for us to be able to address these issues and maintain some sanity in terms of nationhood, I think that issue has to be settled once and for all. And that little anomaly in the Constitution must be amended.
Honorable, you heard the intro, state of residence, coming from the Senator David Mack. Let's begin with that as well. What exactly did the President say?
Well, he did say that as a means of cushioning the so-called issues surrounding the indigent settler type kind of problems that we've had, maybe we should start to look at residential status rather than indigenship. And I totally 100% accept and agree to that, no matter what it does to federal character. Federal character was defined by us Nigerians, or by a few Nigerians that sat down and decided to define what federal character should be or ought to be. We're evolving. Our collective psyche is changing. We cannot have medieval rules in the 21st century. We have to evolve to either be the nation that we aspire to be or stop being a nation totally. But as long as the nation, the rules, the constitution defines you first, reduces you to an indigent first and foremost before you are even a citizen, I think these problems will continue. So I totally agree with what the Senate President said.
Now you talked about federal character principle.
Yes.
What role does this federal character principle play in perpetuating the indigent and settler
Well,
state?
first and foremost, I am reduced to being a citizen of Bauchi. Then even in Bauchi, I'm now brought down to being further reduced to an indigent of Bauchi Federal Constituency. And then even at that level, you could even break it down lower. So any portion of any palliative measures, means whatever, coming from the federal government or the state, has to be tied to a particular location. And I feel that is insulting to me as a human being. I'm a Nigerian. I'm a citizen of the world. How can I be reduced to one minuscule location? So from universities to contracts to appointments to whatever, you have to be tied to that particular location. So hypothetical situations arise. If the worst person for the job, because of federal character, has to come from a particular location, what do you do? Do we take the most incompetent imbecile and put him in a position only because of federal character?
All right, Honorable, I'll hold you there. We're supposed to get a package on what the Senate President said, but I think it will come up later. Now, does the Nigerian Constitution recognize a settler or an indigent?
It recognizes more an indigent than a settler. Remember, according to the Constitution, if you live 5 years, I think, in a location, you have the same rights as an indigent, so to speak. You can vote, you can be elected into office, you can do what you can aspire to be, whatever you. But you and I know that's not true.
It's not being operated.
Exactly, it's not being operated. So we need to really look at what the issues are. Why is it not being operated? If you look at the issues in Plateau, this, like you said, the primordial sentiment of ownership. I own. It's medieval at best. We're evolving as a nation, and people need to realize the more control you cede to the people, the more powerful the nation will become. But as we are right now, just like the assertion I made initially, if we stick to these rules, then we will keep on having the most incompetent people possibly representing the people, because you're reducing the pool to a particular plate, which might be too small if you're looking at Nigeria within the broader context.
Now, if this does not hold water, and of course we look at it, is a demand in the official document, of course the one for state of origin, does it not contradict the Constitution?
It contradicts you being a Nigerian. The only time you're asked to prove you're a Nigerian citizen is probably when you're asked to present your international passport. But at every other strata of human endeavor, all you're asked is, first they ask you you're indigent, then you take another little box, your religion. And I feel that is so baseless. We on the surface claim we want to be a nation, we want to promote nationhood, federalism, and so on and so forth. Yet again, we cling to these sentiments that actually defy all the rules of nationhood and federalism.
Now, how will this apply, to a lot of Nigerians in diaspora? There's been a lot of, controversy about state of residence. How will this apply to citizens, or rather settlers, who have lived in a particular place for a very, very long time, who do not want to be associated with state of residence, rather state of origin?
Well, that is entirely a personal opinion. If you want to call yourself a settler, you want to call yourself an indigent, or whatever you are, as long as the law is ratified or is redefined to prove and to give you certain powers, whatever name you choose to call yourself, that is entirely up to you. But it is insulting for me to live in a particular location 30 years, 4 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, and then I'm still looked upon as a settler. And even the law tends to look at me as a settler. And even in official lingo, you call me a settler. That is very insulting. And if you're telling me I'm a settler, what message are you telling me? That sooner or later I will have to go back to where it is that I came from, regardless. So what does that do to my psyche? Do you think I'll be productive to this particular location? Yeah. Or would I be gathering and hoarding, knowing one day soon I may have to leave this place? It's not home. So it doesn't do good. Whatever you choose to call yourself, as long as the law, and then the lawyers also, as long as they choose to look at people and call them with these derogatory terms, as far as I'm concerned, they are not helping the matter. It is one nation. We're working together to try to solve the problems that we inherited, or the problems that were created because of myopic and selfish thinking of the people in the past. And we should all join hands together and make sure we live a better nation than we found. It's as simple as that. Looking
at the demerits already from this indigent settler dichotomy and all that, will you advocate the scrapping of the federal character principle?
120% yes. This is my personal opinion.
Okay, that now we've identified the problem. How can we get to get people to buy into this?
Well, you see, this is something that we at the House of Representatives are doing, which is something that's never been done before. We're taking constitutional review down to the lowest levels of society. All 360 of us, we decided, under the leadership of Aliyu Ibrahim Gebi, of course, that the Constitution belongs to the people. Therefore, let us give it to the people. Let them tell us what they want to be in this document that will guide their daily endeavors. And we intend to take it to the lowest level and ask them what they want, and we will listen to their input. We'll synthesize their input and present it in Parliament, and we'll take a vote. And that is what will form the basis of the constitutional review.
Are all the 360 members of the House of Reps in sync with your thinking and the thinking of the House leadership?
Well, we are one indivisible house. We are the 7th Assembly. There's absolutely no doubt about it. We are the 7th Assembly under the leadership of Aliyu Ibrahim Gebi. And when we came in, remember, our maxim was it's no longer business as usual, but business unusual, as captured in our legislative agenda. And where he leads, we follow. And on this particular issue, we're 100% behind him, behind our leadership, and there is no going back. Unless if they give us a different tune to dance to.
So you are assuring Nigerians in the next, after the constitutional amendment, the constitution that will emerge will have that part of our constitution expunged. Probably have a state of residency as part of what kind of things you'll be feeling.
Inshallah, hopefully. You need to understand that, again, this is a very unique occurrence. You have the House of Representatives and the Senate in total sync. So for the first time in a really, really long time, I will be humble to say, I wouldn't say for the first time ever, you have a National Assembly that is united in purpose. And this purpose is absolutely sincere. We're trying to make a difference. And we're asking for input from the people that we are representing, whatever they want, within reason, because sometimes the governor will have to choose the best decision for the governed, because it might not actually be the best for them in the long term. But as far as issues like the indigenous settler type kind of quagmire that we find ourselves, I assure you the House is united, the National Assembly is united.
Honorable, as you're speaking, something came to my mind.
Yes.
And that is the role of the governors, the role they play in such issues. I'm envisaging, what if some of the governors decide to work against this agenda, this objective? How would the House tackle it?
Well, you see, the fact of the matter is the governors are also, well, we look upon them as partners in progress. I represent my governor in the National Assembly. We're from the same federal constituency. So technically speaking, in Abuja, I'm his voice, but in Bauchi, he's my governor. Right? And majority, the will of the majority must rule the day. And I don't think there's any governor, seeing the problems that we have right now in Nigeria, that will try to scuttle this particular process. I don't think it will augur to anybody's well-being, technically speaking, politically speaking, for you to try to scuttle this. Again, it's a tidal wave of change. Whether we like it or not, things are changing. So you can either stand against the wave and be swept away by the tsunami, or you can join the current and have your name carved in history and be immortalized forever as somebody that did something positive for the nation.
Do you think this will affect peace more in the communities?
Yes, it will, without a shadow of a doubt.
Now, let's look at, in the intro, we talked about the House of Fulani community rejecting the appointment of Lawal Ishaq, the Hausa lawyer, as senior special advisor to the Plateau State Governor. Yes. The pressure group, the Hausa People in Just, gave the reason that it would attempt to make the Hausa People settlers in Just. There's this saying, or rather the frame of thought that the people are entitled to their opinion for what works best for them. But do you agree with this frame of thought?
Yes and no. First and foremost, the Just North Hausa Fulani people have a right to express their needs, their yearnings, and their aspirations as citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and as indigents of the state of Plateau. If there is an attempt by the governor, allegedly, to try to scuttle their ancestral rights, as it were, because they are indigents, I have ties, I have roots in Jos also. There's hardly any northerner that does not have any ties or roots based in one way or the other in Plateau. And as long as the government will try to make you look like, okay, this person, let us appease him by compartmentalizing his needs and defining it by some extracurricular means. In the past, because our collective psyche hadn't evolved to where it is now, you will feel appeased. Oh yes, I'm feeling special. There's a particular advisor that will talk to the governor on my... But now we are realizing what that does is actually scuttles your ambition, and it scuttles the reality that really the only reason why you're special is because you're an indigent of this particular location. So you're either as special as everyone else or everyone else is as special as you. The bottom line is equity and justice. We must be treated the same. The Biroman and the Fulani man residing in Jos must be treated the same and must have the same rights access to the same measures, means, whatever, must have. It's just about equity and social justice. And we can go round and round and round and round, call whatever we want to call it, but as long as there's no equity, there's no social justice, nothing is served, as far as I'm concerned.
Now I'm thinking, you have a working document, a constitution that addressed this issue. I don't think the problem will go away with just the wave of the wand. What do you think, now looking at it in a broader sense, not just as a lawmaker, what do you think the Nigerian people, the Nigerian government should put in place to ensure that by way of maybe educating, sensitizing the people that you have equal status and you can live, cohabit peacefully?
I totally agree. I represent, I'm one of the MPs in the ECOWAS Parliament. I am Deputy Chairman, Committee on Trade, Customs and Free Movement of Persons. What I found beautiful about the ECOWAS text is there is actually a huge amount of resources dedicated to explaining what a citizen of the community is, and it is brilliant. And there are billboards when you're leaving borders and so on and so forth. We're still trying to do substantially more. And it would be beautiful if Nigeria could adopt that model also. And if we could take it down to the lowest level of our education system, start from the nursery, primary school, so that you know your rights. I recall, and I say this whenever I get the opportunity, when I was young, on the top of our blackboard, it was written, apartheid is a crime against humanity. It's still in my mind, but it's no longer there. So imagine now if the right nationhood or building a nation requires peace, or we are one Nigeria or whatever. Right from that level, you will grow with that in your mind, and you realize, Fulani, Birom, Efik, whatever, we are Nigerians first before we are indigents of this and so on and so forth. Yeah. And so if I think the government, Ministry of Education, well, I don't want to talk about federal character because I don't believe in it. We are one nation, we are one people, simple as that. There's absolutely no need for that. If particularly Ministry of Education would go on an enlightening campaign throughout the educational system, I think it would help. You would raise generations after generations of people that would think of themselves first and foremost as Nigerians. And you'll beat your chest and say, my flag is green, white, green, your flag is green, white, green. Therefore, we are brothers. Before we start talking about Bauchi, Plateau, Kano, Maiduguri, and so on and so forth.
You know, a lot of the argument is that politicians still have a role to play in this, and have fanned the embers of the difference, differences for different groups. Do you think this also has caused?
No, but you see, the fact of the matter is that the politician is like a chameleon. You try to adapt with whichever situation you find yourself. Yes. So if indigenship supports your candidature to become, you will be an indigent. If citizenship, whatever. But we have reached a point of critical mass. It is not working. The Igbo man that has lived in Gombe for 40 years is as much a Gombe man, an indigent of Gombe, as the Fulani man that was there 20 years before him or 30 years before him. Now, these are the anomalies that we must correct. And once we correct these, people will now feel, yes, I own a stake in this particular location, therefore I will give it my best. But as long as you have Igbo people, for example, I'm sorry I keep using Igbo people as an example, living in Bauchi but holding indigent certificates from the East. Doesn't make sense. That means you feel you're only against. Exactly, one day, and then you find people in isolated clusters. And this is happening more and more. You have this location, only this tribe, this location, only this tribe, and so on. And we say we are a nation. It doesn't make sense. The governors have a lot more role to play in this. They need to not forcefully reintegrate people, but they need to diplomatically reintegrate people. Otherwise, these clusters, one day you'll need a visa for you to go into the other tribes community. And another beautiful thing that we're beginning to lose is that intercultural marriages. That is also...
it's also fading.
I was thinking it was on the rise.
No, it's on the increase.
Unfortunately,
it's on the decline.
Really?
It's on the decline.
Well, thank you, Honorable. Quite insightful and interesting. And Honorable Aliyu Gebi here said we are one nation, we are one people, we have one flag, green, white, green, and every Nigerian is a Nigerian. It doesn't matter whether you've been there for 20 years or 40 years. Indigent settlership, to be or not to be, well, you've heard him. Well, state of origin, David Mack's proposal is what we've looked at, and we've had the honor of having Honorable Aliyu Gebi, Chairman Committee on Internal Security, representing Bauchi constituency. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
And still Kakaki, the African Voice. We'll be right back after this time out. Don't go anywhere.
It's time for Pan-Africa. Dozens of gunmen have occupied Libya's parliament to register their anger over formation of a new government. The militiamen are demanding some of the ministers to be removed because they have links to the late Muammar Gaddafi's regime. At least a dozen trucks mounted with anti-aircraft guns are lining the main road to the parliament. Libya held a peaceful election in July and finally agreed the composition of a government on Wednesday. Nearly 400 people have been arrested in a major security operation in the Somali port city of Kismayo. African Union troops, the Somali army and the pro-government militia gained control of the strategic port last month from Al-Qaeda-aligned militants. A militia spokesman said those arrested were believed to be supporters of the Islamic Al-Shabaab group. Since Al-Shabaab's withdrawal, there has been frequent bombings in the city. In the latest attack on Tuesday, 4 civilians were killed when a bomb exploded in the town center or outside a restaurant. Morocco on Thursday announced the arrest of a 9-member terrorist cell that authorities said planned to set up a training camp in the rugged Rif Mountainous region from where to launch attacks. According to Morocco's Interior Ministry, 5 of the 9 were remanded in custody